Hey everybody, so in this video we're going to finish talking about completing the square, and I want to do some examples where the leading coefficient or the a value isn't 1. Okay, so we're going to use the same directions that we've been using, which is complete the square to put it into vertex form. Okay, and we're going to use exactly the same technique that we were using in class. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is factor out the leading coefficient, and this is really where the process differs from what we were doing in class, right? Before we didn't have anything to factor out, but now we are going to factor out this 2. So we're going to factor it out of x squared and 8x, and because this 12 is on the outside of the parentheses, we're not factoring out the 2. Okay, then we need to decide what number we're going to add in here. So just like before, we're going to take the coefficient of x, we're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to square it. Okay, so this 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is going to give us 4. Okay, so what we had before was this, 2 times x squared plus 4x. Okay, and then on the outside we had plus 12. Okay, so now we are going to add 4 on the inside of the parentheses here. We were doing that before in class. Okay, and we know that we need to balance this by subtracting the same number out here. Now this is also a little bit different than when there's no leading coefficient. Now I'm going to multiply these two together to tell me what to add out here. Okay, so 2 times 4 is 8. So I'm going to balance that plus 8 with my minus 8. Okay. Now the last part, remember, is we are going to factor the part that's in parentheses. Okay, so I have x squared plus 4x plus 4, so I'm looking for something that multiplies to 4 and adds to 4. So I think that's going to be 2 and 2. Okay, I have 12 minus 8, which is 4. Okay, and now I'm going to rewrite this as my final step, right, where I'm writing this with x plus 2 squared plus 4. Okay, and this is in our final vertex form, right? We have the a value being 2, just like it was here. We have our h value being negative 2, and we have our k value being 4. Okay, let's look at another example like this. Okay, so I'm going to start again by factoring out my leading coefficient 3. Okay, and then I'm going to figure out what number I need to add. So I have minus 4, this number here, divided by 2, and then square it. Okay, so minus 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, squared, that's 4. Okay, so I'm going to take what I had before, and I'm going to add in my 4 here, and and I am going to subtract 3 times 4, or 12. Okay. Now before we were just subtracting the 4 part, and that was because we had a 1 in the front, right? 1 times 4 was 4, so we were subtracting the multiplication. We just didn't need to think about that. Okay. Now I'm going to factor the part that's in parentheses. I need something that adds to -4 and multiplies to +4. So that should be -2 and -2. Okay, plus 15 minus 12 is plus 3. And I'm going to have 3 times x minus 2 squared plus 3 as my vertex form. Okay, so the two main differences are coming from this first step where we're factoring out the 3, this step here. Okay, and then in this third step where we are subtracting 3 times 4 instead of just 4. Okay. All right. So that's the idea of this. There are a lot of examples in the classwork and in the homework where the leading coefficient is -1. So I want to go over those examples specifically so we can see how that one works. Okay. This will also be useful for next week when we talk about graphing with this. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our second example. Same directions. Okay, so we're going to use the same technique that we used for example 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is factor out this negative. Okay, so I have -1 times x squared minus 12x. Okay, and then I have my plus 9 out here. I'm going to find out what number I have to add. So I do -12 divided by 2, and then I square it. Okay, so this is going to be -6 squared, or 36. Okay, so I have -1 times x squared minus 12x, and then outside my parentheses I have plus 9. So I'm going to add my 36 in here, okay, and then I'm going to subtract this number times this number, okay. Now -1 times 36, that's -36. Okay. So now I have to factor the inside part, so I want something that multiplies to +36 and adds to -12. So that should be -6 and -6. Okay. And now I have plus 9 and minus 36, right? So we know that minus is really plus. So I have 9 plus 36, or positive 45. Okay. I want that to look like a negative sign. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do is rewrite this with a square, x minus 6 squared, okay, plus 45. So sometimes this can be a little bit tricky at this part where we're looking at -1 times 36. So remember, we're adding 36, we're going to subtract what we get from the multiplication, right? Just like we did before. So we are subtracting, but then when we do the multiplication, we get -36. So this is the subtraction that we always do, this first one here. okay? And this negative 36 is the product of negative 1 here and 36 here. Okay, let's look at a second example of this. Okay, so I'm going to start by factoring out that negative 1 in the front. Okay, now you can see that in the first example we wrote it out as negative 1 right here, and in this example we just left it as negative, right? Those are really the same. Then we're going to figure out which number we need to add. So I'm going to take this 6, divide it by 2, and square it. Okay. So before I had negative, oops, negative x squared plus 6x. Okay, and then outside the parentheses I had plus 13. So now I'm going to add in my 9. Okay, and then I'm going to subtract the product of this number and this one. So negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. Okay. So now I'm going to factor the part that is inside the square root. Okay, so I am looking for something that is multiplying to positive 9 and adding to positive 6. So it should be plus 3 and plus 3. And I have 13 minus negative 9, right? Again, minus minus is plus. So I have 13 plus 9, or 22. So the final form of this is going to be negative x plus 3 squared plus 22. Okay, and again, I wanted to point out that in this example, we had it as negative 1, and in this example, we just left it as the negative symbol, and both of these are correct. Okay. All right, I hope those examples help you guys with the rest of the classwork, and I will see you in class.